And essentially, everything that we feel in labor is either our body doing something to move through the labor process or a baby doing something to move through the labor process. And if you have tools, if you have positions, if you have support, and if you're willing to explore how you would handle these things, it can make all of it so much easier to navigate.
Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. Welcome to our episode today. Ashley and I keep coming across, we've come across this forever since we've been teaching, but we want to discuss pain today. And not only the physical pain, but the mental pain of labor, postpartum, birth, all of those things, because it really has more to do with the skill set and our life lived experiences that we're bringing into our pregnancy, labor, and birth and postpartum, rather than the pain of labor. And you could go to YouTube and put, how do I avoid pain in labor? How do I not feel pain? What is the best birth method to, have me sail through birth without any pain and feel like I have fairy dust and angels sprinkled around with unicorns? You may find birth methods that say that, because I know exactly which ones you're going to find. However, our question today is, why are we avoiding pain? And why are we avoiding the lessons that pain brings us? That's the question. We know that when we go through something challenging and something hard, we expand who we are. We realize how much stronger we thought we were than we did at the time or before the challenge happened. Hindsight, we are different people when we go through challenges, pain, discomfort. And Ashley and I are going to take on different roles today. I'm going to take on the mental pain and discomfort and the mental load that is, and she's going to take on the physicality role of pain and discomfort and what that means, because I think they both go together and we kind of need to look at those in a different way. So yeah, that's where we're going to start today.
In birth work, there's a saying that you will often hear if you spend time talking to doulas and educators, that birth is 90% mental. And Kira's right on when she says that the mental and physical are intertwined. It's true, because all of us experience pain, discomfort, intensity, pressure, whatever words you want to use for it is unique to each individual person. And we also face pain and discomfort different ways in our lives and have been taught to either walk through it, grin and bear it, or avoid it completely. And we all have different tolerances based on our lived experiences. I have moms all the time who either take our hypnobirthing classes or who hire me as a doula. And the first thing they say to me is, I'm such a wimp, I have no pain tolerance. And then they'll tell me all of this crazy stuff that they've gone through in their lives. And I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure you have no pain
And
tolerance?
sometimes that's
And
the
so,
story they've adopted because someone's told them that, right? And in our last episode, you're going to hear that with her talking about that.
yeah. And you also will carry around the weight of a lot of different, stories about either how you were born or how your grandmother was born or whatever, that paint labor to be a certain type of experience. But the reality is, regardless of how your family members experienced or your friends experience it, or what you see on YouTube or what you see on the internet, your experience is your own. So we're going to be talking today about how you master the discomfort of labor and utilize the discomfort of labor, the purpose of the discomfort of labor, and ultimately how you come out the other side, having the birth that you hope to have or as close to it as possible.
Well, and I think we spend so much freaking energy avoiding the topic of pain and discomfort, and to our own detriment, we waste so much energy that we could be spending in curiosity. And I think we want you to look at this episode as a workshop of sorts. I want you to take what we're going to talk about, sort it out for yourself, and actually implement the curiosities and the skills for it. Ask yourself, based on my own life experience, how does this relate to me? Why am I avoiding? What can I walk towards instead of how many walls can I put up so that I don't feel anything? Because we are so good at numbing ourselves and keeping ourselves protected that we aren't feeling life. We are meant to feel life. And we have a very cushy life nowadays, whether we think so or not, we do. And our instinct is to avoid pain, fear, discomfort. It's what saves us. However, we're not earning the skills that we need in order to deal with what our children that we are bringing into the world are going to be dealing with. And I have had moms say, everything's always worked out for me. I followed the rules and it worked. I've never had to walk through anything that was uncomfortable for me because my mom buffered it, my dad greased the wheels, whatever it was. And now they're facing being a parent. And while we understand why our parents did that for us, because they didn't want us to feel anything or go through the hardships they did, is that a detriment for what we're about to do with our own kids? Because just like Ashley said, we are going to experience pain and discomfort during labor, pregnancy, and birth and postpartum. It is what happens. So wouldn't it be easier to accept it, find out what our strengths are with that before we walk into it? And I also want to preference this with, it's not about having an unmedicated birth or a perfect birth with all the things lining up. Awesome if that's your ideal of what you want. It's about, what life skills do I need to move forward with my child? It's about, what is my past, the stories, the experiences that have led me up to wanting to avoid this, and why can't I start dealing with that now? Because your future self needs you to deal with it now so that you're a better future self for your baby. So I'm going to ask you to forward think, what kind of parent would I be if I dealt with this stuff so that I can be a better parent for my baby? So we're going to kind of start there.
I wanna go back a little bit to what you said about there there's always going to be some kind of discomfort, pain, whatever in birth and postpartum. It doesn't matter what type of birth you plan. If it's a cesarean, I've had people be like, "Well, I'm gonna have a cesarean so I don't have to feel anything." Then the discomfort is after, right? So, yeah, you don't have to feel anything when you're having the baby, but guess what? You have to recover after having that birth. I'm gonna get an epidural, so I don't have to worry about it. What are you gonna do until you get the epidural? What are you gonna do if it doesn't work? What is your plan? People want to oversimplify, like always, right? We want there to be a simple answer. We wanna oversimplify, "Well, I'll just do this," in response to dealing with labor, because we don't wanna actually go deeper, and we don't wanna recognize, or maybe we've never been taught how mental birth actually is and how much of it is controlled by how our brain perceives things and how we've been, cultivated throughout our lives, that we want there to be a simple fix. Well, I'll just do this and then I don't have to feel this, but there's no getting around it. Being pregnant, having a baby is never going to be 100% comfortable. And that, I mean, we could even just talk about pregnancy, right? Like, the reality is pregnancy changes your body forever, and there are going to be periods of time in your pregnancy where you're like, "I'm so uncomfortable. This hurts." And we have to start recognizing that discomfort and even pain, I find it really funny that we're talking so much about pain today, Care, because we are trained in our hypnobirthing to, like, never talk about pain, but we do in our classes and in our lives and with our clients, walk into it head on all the time. That we have to start recognizing that almost everything we want in our lives is on the other side of something uncomfortable, right? That doesn't make it bad. That doesn't make it bad for us mentally and emotionally. Not all pain is bad. Not all discomfort is bad. And there will always be discomfort. You cannot go through your whole lives avoiding it. You will not go through your whole pregnancy without avoiding it, and what you will not get through birthing your baby, regardless of the door that baby comes out of or the medications that you use in your birth experience, you will not avoid discomfort. It is impossible.
Well, and you know what's funny is I picked up a placenta this last week, and I had an amazing birth. It was awesome. I am miserable. My breastfeeding is not going well. I'm not sleeping. Like she like sobbed. I wasn't prepared for this. I spent all my time planning on and getting all my skills ready for birth. I thought this would take care of itself if my birth was good. And I'm like, yeah, nope. Like there's always going to be some discomfort. It's all new to us. And it's that unknown. And she said that it's like the unknown of birth was way more important for me to figure that out. And I did all the things. I just thought that I would have the right support for postpartum and it would sort itself out. I can't even think, I'm so tired. I'm like, yeah, like it's and if we have built those skills ahead of time with just some curiosity to look at it as I like, okay, let's start right there. Will you look at your pregnancy, your labor? Because if you're not pregnant yet, this is a great time to listen to this. Your pregnancy, labor, birth, and postpartum with curiosity. Like no stories, not all of the things that everybody else has taught you, mentioned to you, freaked you out with, everything that you've learned on TV, what you learned in sex ed, whatever, all of that dispelled, like leave it alone. And then look at it with curiosity, like what could it look like? This is going to be your first question. If we're going to use this episode as a workshop, if I was going to look at my labor, birth, postpartum parenting as a positive experience without all the negative stuff, what would that look like? Could you write that down? My pregnancy would be like ending on time. My labor would start. I could cope with it. This happened. Maybe I'm getting the epidural and it's the perfect dose and whatever, or I'm not. And my baby falls out in the bathtub at the hospital. Like, whatever you're thinking, right? What beautiful things could happen as that baby looks up in your eyes and you look down and it's the first time you two are seeing this baby. Like, think about all the positive things. We call that the what if scenario. We do some of these exercises in class. What if it was magic? What if you could feel it from head to toe and your whole body erupted in vibration of love and expansion and, oh my God, I did this, and the pride and all of that? What if that was your experience? What would that look like? What would that feel like? I always want to start off in the positive, right? Because our mind immediately has already gone to the negative. So then if you backtrack that, think about all the barriers to having that beautiful experience. Because what science has shown is that if you set goals and ideals and standards, if you have looked at the barriers and the things that could interrupt that, and then find out backup plans for that, you have a much better shot at getting what you actually wanted for your goals and ideals. That's science-backed proof because you've walked through all the what ifs of the negative and how would I handle that? And who would my support person be? And how would I speak that into language? And what would I do to get back on track? That works for our goals in January, also, by the way. So think about the second part of this workshop, quote unquote. What are the barriers to that happening? Maybe I always freeze. I don't have a voice. I feel like my partner's going to abandon me. All my family's going to show up. Like, what is it that are the barriers to you having this comfortable, calm, and beautiful birth? And then the next part is I want you to think about it, everything you're going to be writing from your baby's perspective. Because whether you've talked about this or not, this is your baby's one pregnancy with you, only birth experience for themselves and with you, their only postpartum because they're new and brand new coming into life. You've had life experience. Everything that you're going through right now is brand spanking new for this baby. How are you treating them while they're in your body? How are you preparing for them coming out of your body? All of that's new to them. How are they feeling your anxiety, your excitement? How is this shaping their personality? What choices are you making now that are affecting their life and their only birth and their only chance to connect with you in this early stage? If you can look at it from that perspective instead of my pain, my scared, my this, it's going to change the way you prepare. It's also going to change the way you feel about the experience and the way you tackle parenting later, also postpartum later. So look at it first from this is not your experience, it's your baby's experience. What's the positive and how can this be so magical and what would it look like and feel like and taste like? Because that's what we're here for is life. And then with the pain and discomfort that can come along with it or the things that will foil what you want, How does that look, and what kind of things do you need to do to prepare for that and find backup plans for that?
Yeah, it's something that we talk about in class when we're teaching hypnobirthing. We talk specifically about the laws of the mind and where the mind can be utilized, just the way that it works. The way that science has proven that our mind works, how it can be utilized in different aspects of labor. And I feel like you hit on a really big one that we talk about, which is a mind that is motivated and that believes that it can do something versus a mind that believes it is not capable or cannot, will not allow the body to achieve that.
You're always
And
right, right? You are always right about how you think. If you
yeah,
think you can't do it, yep. If you think you can do it, yep.
yeah, you will prove yourself right every time. And we talk about athletes, we talk about, Super Bowls and championships, and I had a really good time this last summer teaching talking about the Olympics and what all of these individual athletes achieve. Not one of them went there thinking, "There's no way I can do this." None of them got to that place believing, "This isn't possible, I'm incapable, this isn't gonna happen." No. All of them started with the belief of, "This is what I want to achieve," and then they took the steps needed to achieve it, but it starts with the belief, right? And so, again, regardless of what type of birth you're planning, if you can be curious about what you would want for your birth and you can visualize and think about, what would my perfect day look like meeting my baby? And then first you believe that can be achieved. Then you will find the tools and build the tools you need, and you will be able to cultivate a path essentially to create that birth experience. Is it always going to be everything you pictured? No, nothing we ever achieve in life happens exactly how we expected it to, or without stumbling blocks or without discomfort, right? The name of the game is discomfort. And that's true for anybody who's ever been successful or achieved something, some incredible feat, is that there are difficulties, stumbling blocks, changes of direction, you know, curves in the path along the way. But it starts with that acknowledgement of this may be hard, but the belief that I can do it anyway. And that's so critical. And that's really the foundation of what Kara is talking about here, is using this curiosity about what could be to cultivate a belief system going into your birth of just what you could be capable of and what you deserve and what your baby deserves. And that's really how you set yourself up for finding the right support, the right education, the right provider. But it starts with that belief that not only can you have what you want for your birth, can you have what you want for your baby's birth, but what you and your baby deserve for your birth experience. But it really starts with that belief that it can happen. And additionally, something that I say in my classes, and I'm sure Care says something very similar, is regardless of your relationship with discomfort and difficulty and negative experiences, right? We're here to explore that and figure out how we can either utilize it or change it to help you achieve the birth you want. Regardless, when you look back at your life and everything that has brought you to this point, you have survived 100% of the most difficult days of your lives. You are here because everything difficult, every grief, every pain, every, struggle, every loss, you have come through the other side. You're here despite, maybe because of the difficult things that you have gone through. So when we're talking about labor, which is so temporary,
So
pregnancy, which is
temporary.
so temporary,
Just like the
and
postpartum stuff,
postpartum,
so
so
temporary.
temporary. And, as a mom now of 14 years, so many things through parenting are temporary because everything is a phase when you're raising a child from infancy to now teenagerhood, right? So when people tell me, I just don't do well with pain. I don't know, like, what I'm going to do. I don't know how I get through it. That's where that curiosity and exploration comes in, because then how are you still here? If you can't handle pain and discomfort, how are you still here? How have you gotten through all of those days? And really, that's like an aha moment. That's a light bulb moment I see in so many of my classes. When I say that to them, they're like, "Oh my God, yeah, yes, I am still standing. I'm here. I'm here as this whole person now gestating a baby with my partner, and I'm here because I can get through difficult things." And when we talk about how temporary labor is, how temporary the discomfort of contractions are, and all of that, it really puts it into perspective. And so that is something that I really encourage you to remind yourself, right? You're still standing. You're here listening to this podcast because you can get through difficult things.
Well, and we also think in huge graphic terms when we're pregnant, right? We are so trying to protect our young on a biological, physiological, evolutionary level that the thought of pain, the thought of discomfort, the thought of protecting ourselves and our baby from all of that, it makes the situation way bigger than it actually is because it's another life experience that you've already gone through. You just have a heads up about this one. The other ones kind of just slam you from the side. This one, you have time to stew about it, which makes it bigger and worse, right? And one of the things when you said stumbling blocks and a thought came to me, it was a quote that my best friend who died in high school, or she died in college, but her one of her number one quotes was the only difference besides stepping stones and stumbling blocks are the way that we use them. And I think as a parent, isn't that the best quote? And which helped me get through her death, actually. When we look at the pain and the discomfort, are we going to let those be more blocks to our life and our expansion? Or are we going to figure out how to utilize what is inevitable and coming? It's not that this is going to be the worst pain of your life and it's going to be like all your bones are breaking and everything. When you hear people say a contraction is 200,000 times more painful than bones being broken. Okay.
Insufferable.
It's insufferable, right? And so our what we're thinking is it's way bigger than it is, or it's I mean, we do think that. We think it is as big as it is because what's scientifically proven, but we also are not compensating for the endorphins that are released, the place we can go with our mind, how powerful our bodies are. That's why we can handle it and have since the beginning of time. So let's start with some education. Ashley, can you tell me or define and I'm going to do the mental part, you do the physical part, the physicality of labor. What is pain? Like how are we thinking of pain? What is that?
Yeah. And I'm going to start this by piggybacking again off of what you said when you
We're just going
talked
to piggyback
about.
all day. And then,
I
yeah.
love it because you say things and then it just like it's again like light bulb moments, and it ties into what I want to say, which is you say we think of labor as this like big thing that's like coming towards us, and that we've been taught to fear it, because our whole lives, for every other aspect of our existence, pain equals danger, right?
Yep.
We're taught to avoid danger. I mean, it's not even taught, it's in our DNA as Homo sapiens to avoid danger, right? It's why we know that things taste bitter if they're poisonous, and to avoid certain sounds because it means danger. Like it's in our DNA. There's really no getting around it. We are danger avoidant, as we should be, because that's how we survive in the world. But we have come to associate all pain with being dangerous, or meaning that there's danger. And the reality is that the discomfort of labor is purposeful, and it is not dangerous to feel discomfort. And it's one of those brain switches that we have to find a way to turn around our perception. We have to turn around our perception of what it means to feel discomfort. And, again, how I put this in perspective in class is talking about when we do things that are physically good for our bodies, like working out or running, and trying new activities that are often physically uncomfortable. Does that make them dangerous or bad for us? No, because as our muscles expand and grow and strengthen, there's discomfort that comes with that, right? And labor is the same idea where not everything that is uncomfortable for our body is bad for our body or dangerous. And the discomfort or pain of labor is very, very different from most of the other discomfort and pain that we feel in our lives, which is another sort of explanation that I give people when they tell me, oh, my pain tolerance is so low,
Oh my
right?
gosh, that was so my excuse. I had been told that since I was little. I reflected it. I was scared of needles. I had never done anything physically hard. And now I was going to do a natural birth. My family thought I was crazy. Crazy. My mom told me I would die in childbirth. She's like, you can't do that. I mean, I'm glad I didn't listen, but even my husband was like, you can't do it. I don't know how you're going to do this. So, yeah, that low pain tolerance thing, we all use it.
Well, I would love to have debunked your mom and said, guess what? You can't die from pain, which that's the other thing that when I tell people that, they're like, whoa, yeah, discomfort is not going to kill you. You're not going to die from pain. What makes childbirth dangerous, it has nothing to do with how comfortable or uncomfortable it is at all, period. And when people hear that, they're like, oh, wait, yeah, you're right. I have never died from the pain that I've experienced in my life.
I've just spent my
And
whole life trying to avoid it.
yeah, exactly. Um, that pain is not gonna kill us. So even if you do experience the most painful labor of anybody in the whole entire world, you're still gonna come out the other side of it with a baby and you, right? That's that's the bottom line, is that what we experience in labor is the same mechanisms for every person. We have this muscle that is our uterus that needs to open the door that is our cervix to allow our baby to come out and then expel the baby from our body. It's actually a very simple sort of automated process that our muscles do, right? And everybody has to go through the same things to have their baby. What is different from person to person is how long that goes on, their baby's position maybe, but ultimately how they perceive what is happening to them and how they perceive what they're feeling. And
And the mental load is different, right?
yeah,
Like how I assume it's going to feel can be more exhausting than actually what it's actually happening in our bodies because we're perceiving it's going to be horrible. And when I've been with moms who have they come into labor thinking that, which hopefully we can kind of reverse that while we're in our prenatals or in classes. But if their perception is it's going to be the worst pain of my life, once again, they are right. And is it going to start off like that? Probably not. So can we just be in the moment with it? Because the mentality of perceiving that it's horrible because we don't know what it is because it's an unknown to us is worse than the actual what's happening to us.
I mean, that's the reality with anxiety, right? Nothing will ever be as bad as anxiety tells you it will be. Ever. Not ever in our lives do we have an anxious thought and create a scenario in our mind via anxiety that actually comes to fruition that way. Anxiety is a liar. And that's really what we're dealing with, right? When we're thinking about birth and we're creating all of these thoughts around it about how impossible it's going to be and how painful it's going to be, that's anxiety taking over, that anxiety of the unknown. And there are factors that can be out of our control. Your tolerance of the discomfort of labor might be different early on than if it goes on for a long time and you're tired, right? If we don't eat and drink during our labor and we're withholding nutrition from ourselves, how are we going to tolerate labor if we're depleted and not nourishing ourselves or dehydrated, right? Some of us can feel very overstimulated by lights, sounds, voices, people talking, and need quiet. Some of us need distractions. And depending on what works for you, that's also going to influence how you are able to focus and get through the discomfort of your labor. And so that's again goes back to what Kara's talking about in that curiosity and exploring how you deal with these things, because it is going to change how you experience your labor. Remember, everybody's muscles are doing the same things. Everybody's cervix is doing the same thing. So what changes is how we perceive what is happening, how we experience what is happening based on our mental, emotional sensory, and like physical well-being going into our birth, right? So the pain of labor is entirely purposeful. The discomfort of labor is entirely purposeful. And there's actually a great doctor that we talk about in class often, Dr. Sarah Buckley, who really changed my perspective on this as a doula when I took her training. And she talked about the biofeedback loop that happens with discomfort in our body and our body's release of pain relief hormones, and how we actually have a feedback loop that takes place in labor wherein we feel the intensity of a contraction. In hypnobirthing, we'll call it a surge or a wave. And it's really strong. It can be really intense. It's temporary. It lasts for about a minute and then it goes away. And when our body experiences discomfort outside of labor as well, it begins to release pain relief hormones to help quell the pain. And we don't get those hormones if we don't feel discomfort. And for that reason, when we start trying to use medications and stuff like that to turn off the pain, that's where it can disrupt that feedback loop of labor where we're not getting those hormones anymore. And guess what? Those hormones in labor also keep our labor moving forward. When you hear people talk about oxytocin, the love hormone, which is the hormone that makes labor move forward and gets us closer to having a baby, what triggers that oxytocin is that feedback loop of intensity that we feel when we're feeling our surges or our contractions. And so there's entirely a purpose to the discomfort that we feel in labor. And other things that can come up that you may feel physically are your baby's movements during labor. Those can be uncomfortable. Your baby's head moving down, rotating, all the different things that they're doing to try and get out. Again, there's a purpose to those movements. They're not doing it just to be mean. They are doing it to navigate their space and get out of your pelvis and get out of your body. And essentially, everything that we feel in labor is either our body doing something to move through the labor process or a baby doing something to move through the labor process. And if you have tools, if you have positions, if you have support, and if you're willing to explore how you would handle these things, it can make all of it so much easier to navigate. So, when we're talking about the physicality of pain or physical pain in labor, we can't define it for you. Again, nobody's going to experience it the same. People ask me all the time when I'm teaching classes, what does labor feel like? I mean, I can tell you broadly that it kind of feels reminiscent of period pains, but no two people will ever experience their labor the same way because no two people are coming into labor with the same perspectives, life experiences, sensory needs, nutrition, emotional support, all of the things that we need that really dictate how we experience discomfort in our lives and how we move through it. What I can tell you is that it is temporary, that a contraction lasts for a minute or two, that your labor will be about a day in your life. And knowing that is, for some people, such a helpful way to look at it and such a helpful coping mechanism. I know for me, remembering that things are temporary really, really helps me deal with them because I'm constantly reminding myself that previous discomforts in my life didn't last forever. And here I am on the other side. And so with our students, we really try to remind them like, this is 1 minute, this is one day, this is one birth, right? Even your future births, if you go on to have other children, will not be the same as this one. And so remembering that the physical experience of labor and the what you could call discomfort or pain or whatever you want to call it is purposeful and intentional with the goal of getting the baby out of your body. And what your body is doing and what your baby is doing is not happening to you, it is happening from you. And it is not to with the purpose to cause you pain. It is with the purpose to get your baby on the other side and into your arms. And I think shifting that perspective is so important because, again, every other time that we feel pain in our lives, It's something that is dangerous or something that is happening to us, something we are experiencing because something is wrong. And in the case of labor, this physical experience, every piece of it is part of the puzzle that gets the baby on the other side and into our arms.
Well, and you brought up a really good point. When we're thinking about preparing for labor and understanding, okay, now we know what the physicality of it is. What is our mental attachment to pain that we've had in the past? When things are happening to us, are we in victim mode? Is that like our MO? We're always things are always happening to us. Everyone's always against us. What is our mental capacity when it comes to that life skill? Because if we equate that everything negative in our lives is somebody doing it to us, then of course we want to numb it, stop it, and avoid it. When this is a physical process we're going through, just like a period, it's just happening within our bodies and it's a normal, natural process. But if we are constantly in our regular lives in a victim mode of everyone's against us, nothing goes my way, labor is not going to be any different unless you realize that and address it. What are the skills that you're going to need to look at about what your past life experience has been? Because this is a new experience to move you into parenthood. And depending on the way we were raised, depending on what our filters are, we're seeing pregnancy, labor, birth, and postpartum through those filters, which is why I love that you have a therapist early on in your pregnancy to start working on this stuff. I would love a therapist ahead of time before that, but really helping you to plan for what filters are happening to you as this anxiety grows about the unknowns and what about this and what about that. What works for you with physical things now in your life? Is it somebody cuddling you? Is it somebody telling you everything's okay? Is it you going into a solemn spot where you're like, nope, I just need quiet. I need a warm shower. I need, what is it when you're sick now or feel uncomfortable? What do you do? And don't say, I OD on Tylenol and Advil and all the things, or I drink. Like, whatever that is, we need to address that. But you already know how you handle discomfort and pain right now. So your mental load of processing and planning for what to do during labor needs to be addressed now. Is that going to work? Can't drink in labor, can't OD on painkiller. I've had parents ask that. Have you had parents ask that? What if I just take Tylenol when the labor pains start? I'm not going to do anything. Like,
Yeah.
it's a
Also,
different
can you
kind.
just knock me out? Can you just knock me out? No.
No. I asked for a morphine drip. I'm like, "Can you," not while I was in labor, but to the doctor who said, "You're allergic to everything that goes in the epidural." I'm like, "I'm not allergic to morphine. Can you just give me morphine?" She's like, "No, cannot do that," which I think would have been the answer to all the problems, but no. Um, Knowing what works for you or what doesn't work for you. Those are mental things that you can do to prepare and understand that, okay, in order to get through this discomfort, it's not going to work for me if someone tells me to relax. If they tell me that, it's going to skyrocket me into another planet, right? And we've had that happen before as doulas when we
Well,
say,
it
just
doesn't work
relax.
for anything, like,
No,
outside of labor as well. Like, I even just last week had someone be like, "Relax, Ashley." And I'm like, "Walk away. Walk away right now, or I'm gonna show you relaxed." Like, it doesn't work for anything, and so then when we have somebody who's in this incredibly intense, physical thing that they've never gone through before, and we're like, "Just relax." No. As Care
no,
said, "Fuck off."
fuck off. And we also need to, how are we going to let go? Right? The mental part of labor is surrendering with each discomfort wave. It's breathing into it, walking through it and towards it instead of recoiling back away from it. It will get more intense if you fight it because your body, remember, there's purpose to the discomfort. Your muscles are contracting to push that baby down thin and open that door for your baby to come out. There is a purpose to what's happening. So if you recoil back and you fight against those muscles, and I don't know if you do this in class, Ashley, but when I'm talking to them about contraction versus wave, I show them this is what a contraction has looked like your whole life on every TV program.
Yeah.
and you're not gonna be able to see it unless you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, but your face and everything curls and it looks horrible. I'm like, is that the kind of birth picture you want to leave for your baby? Or could it look intense when you breathing through it with a softer face that's not resisting the discomfort that's happening between your rib cage and your thighs? Because not fighting your muscles is not Charlie horsing what's trying to happen with the blood flow and the movement that will get your baby down closer to coming out. But when you hold back and you push against it and say, I don't want to experience this, your body's going to go, okay, but it's going to hurt worse. You have a choice there, right? And figuring out that there are other methods to moving through and moving towards the discomfort will shorten your labor, will help your baby get into the position it needs to get in to get out. Like there are a lot of missing pieces that happen when you move towards the discomfort than when you recoil from it.
You said one word that really, like, set off what I think so many of us deal with when we're thinking about having a baby and what labor is gonna look like, and it was control. Again, anxiety, this liar, what I tell my kids and anybody when I'm talking to them about anxiety is anxiety lies to us, and it tells us either we can change the past or we can control the future. You cannot. You cannot control how long your labor is. You cannot control how long your baby needs to get here safely or what your baby needs to do through that process. You cannot control your genetic design for how your body responds to labor. You can't control it. And I think that that knowledge, when I say to someone, I don't know how long your labor is going to be, I can't tell you exactly what labor feels like. That unknown, that lack of control is what people are actually afraid of more than what they ultimately experience. It's that whose hands are on the wheel, and I'm so afraid of what I can't control. And what it comes back to that, why are we doing this podcast? Why do we teach these classes? Is because there are things you can control. And that's how you get through life, but especially with pregnancy, labor, postpartum, because there is so much unknown about how things are going to unfold, you need to control what you can. And that means cultivating support for yourself, figuring out who's on your team, and really and truly getting educated. And something that I heard this weekend in another birth workers video, they were talking about how even if you want medication, you need to plan for an unmedicated birth. That's how you have the most successful birth experience because medication is never a guarantee. Again, something we can't control. How does your body respond to medication? How busy is your hospital? How slow is anesthesia going to be in getting to you? And all the different steps that go into getting medication. That your best potential outcomes for your birth is to plan for an unmedicated birth. And then if you want medication and you have the opportunity to get it, you can. But by getting educated and planning for a birth where you had no access to medication or were not able to utilize it or were not going to have it, you have the most tools and coping techniques and knowledge at your disposal to make sure that you can get through whatever your birth throws at you. Education is key. And I meet so many people who say, I don't need to take classes because I'm just going to get an epidural. I don't need to take classes because I'm just going to have a C section.
Well, and here's the part about avoiding pain that is our detriment when it comes to education, right? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put all my power into somebody else to make every decision for me as long as I'm numb. They have no concept about their body, how it works, how to gather the right support, what questions to ask, because they have let their fear of, I don't want to feel anything, their fear of pain, their fear of lack of control, in giving all of that control away to somebody else. And their fear is only going to lead to more fear. It's way bigger when you feel out of control because everything is now being done to you because you are not a participant in what could be or not be happening to you because you just gave it to everybody else by your lack of education and not understanding, for one, how freaking magical your body is, what coping techniques it already has, how the process works, and how to work with it while you're waiting for your medication, what a cascade of intervention looks like with medication. What if, just like Ashley said, what if your epidural didn't work? What if anesthesia was caught in a snowstorm? You weren't planning on that, but it's going to be way worse since you don't have the skills and the understanding of, oh, then I'm going to have to dig in and do XYZ, right? Just like the people who say, I want medication, and then their baby goes, nope, and just falls out of them. They didn't like that either because they weren't prepared. And the education piece is what gets you through the good and the bad and the flow of what your baby needs. Remember, we're looking through the baby's perspective. Mom, I need this. We don't know because there's no verbal communication, but our body is telling us what they need at all times. And we have to go with the flow of that. Our body is telling us what we need, and we have to go with the flow of that. But we need to balance it out with what is our baby needing in this moment. You find that out through education. And when you just say, nope, not doing it, or oh my gosh, I forgot I was pregnant and I didn't take a class and I probably should have. And now I'm 38 weeks, that's not much time to prepare. But this experience is way bigger than modern day society gives it credit for. It is a rite of passage. It can be prepared for. And even the parts that are uncomfortable and we have no control over, the control comes from understanding what you actually do have a say in and how your body actually works and what you actually need from your support team to make this experience as comfortable as possible all the time. One of the things that Ashley has said in class over and over, and I use this now all the time, is the reason we have comfort measures is so that you feel comfortable as you can mentally and physically so that your body can do the work of the intensity of labor. It's not to take the pain away. It's not to cushion it and make the fairy dust and angels show up. It's to help you mentally get through the physicality of labor with the tools that you know will work for you and some others that you're going to learn in class. You don't have those skills yet. You've never done this. We aren't raised in villages anymore where we see people do this all the time, where we're helping as other members of the society group and the community to get that person through the intensity of it. When I show people in class or let them hear what labor sounds like, you see them go, that was too much for me. And I'm like, why is it too much for you? Because right now you're hearing sounds of what you see on TV of screaming, and you feel like that's the danger that Ashley mentioned. You feel like that's horrific pain. When actually, when you're hearing those moaning sounds and seeing the movement, it's intense, but it actually feels better when you're making those sounds. But you don't know that if you're not educated. That's the part of education that I want you to jump into early on so that you have the skills that it takes to play off your past life experiences of what has worked for you and what you need in the future to make this a beautiful experience for both you and your baby. It's still going to be intense. But if you know humor works for you and you know your partner is hilarious and can get you through really hard times because of their humor, why aren't we looking at it as how can this be more fun? Why aren't we watching our favorite trilogy in the early part of labor and sleeping and enjoying chocolate dipped strawberries during the early parts when we can rest and enjoy it? Why are we freaking out, grabbing our bag and running to the hospital? Is that going to serve you long term? Maybe not, right? Especially if you're worried about strangers and all the anxiety of what's next. Why not stay home longer? Education is what gives you those opportunities to actually put a new perspective and a fresh look at your labor, being curious about what's going to work for you instead of what worked for your mom or didn't, what worked for your sister, cousin, friend, and didn't, and what experience they had. Different sperm, different egg. That's not yours. Curiosity is the key, but education is what opens up that door.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, what we say in class is that we have a mantra for labor, right? Longer, stronger, closer together. We need labor to get more intense, to bring us closer to meeting our baby. It starts out really mild, like you kind of talked about, where is this even labor? What am I feeling? And then gradually gets more intense as the time passes. We need it to. That's what brings us closer to meeting our baby. The way is through, as they say. And so,
Well, let's talk a little bit about transition, Ashley. Like, talk a little bit about it. That's when a lot of us give up because it's faster, it's more intense, it's back to back, and it's overwhelming. And we think if it gets worse than this, I
yeah,
think I will split in half and die. Right. But that actually, that transition is the most intensive part. That's it. It doesn't get worse than that. And you're going to get through it. That's the intense part. You know, you were almost done when you hit that part. And that's where a
yep,
lot of us are like, ugh. But that, if you're comparing it to an athlete, that's the wall you hit that you're like, I can't go another step. And then your body goes, yes, you can. And you get that second wind.
yeah. And you can see the finish line, right? Like people talk about transition and they'll be like, "Oh, I've heard about this transition." Which when we say the word transition, we're talking about the last little bit of that door opening, that last little bit of dilation before we're able to start pushing our baby out. That anybody who's gone through labor will tell you sucks. It sucks. And guess what? It's also the shortest part. For most people, transition is less than an hour in that most intense part. And it also means you can see the finish line. When you reach the point in your labor where you're like, I cannot do one more surge. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I'm not getting a break. Yes, you are. It's shorter than it has been. The break in between is shorter than it I it's funny that you said that, Care, because so many labors I'll have moms be like, "I'm not getting a break, I'm not getting a break," and I'll be like, "You're in one right now." That's how you're talking. "Oh, yeah, I am."
And
"Yeah,
my experience with
breathe, you're
transition
in it."
too was different than I've experienced it with other women. Mine got back to back and I was catching that breath in between and it was super intense, but I wasn't scared of it because I just looked at it as this is what it's like now right now. I think I was so in labor land and I had so many hormones on board that it was just okay, breathe deeper right now, it's coming again instead of resist because it's going to hit you like a freight train and you can't. I didn't even go there where I have had to coach through moms that go there, right? It's I can't breathe, it's happening this. Okay, look at me, let's breathe through it. Yes, it's coming again, let's not think about that right now, you're breathing. And I didn't do that in my own. So it can be once again experienced in different ways with different people. But that most intense part, it's how you handle it. We're going through it, and this is the part that we, as your support team, meet you on the other side. You have
Mhm.
to go through it. And I do remember that. I went, oh shit, no one's birthing this baby for me. I got to do this. I remember that thought. And I wasn't even swearing back then, but I said, oh shit, in my head because it was that intense for me. Probably now I would have been like, oh, fucking wah, wah. But it was the oh shit. And I watched that as a doula. You watch that over and over as we're supporting families go through. There's that click of, oh, yep. And we're going to be right here with you every step of the way, but you have to walk through it and you can resist it. And it's 10 times harder and it hurts more. Or you can surrender to it, cry through it, whatever you need to do to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I remind families all the time when I'm teaching is that once you've made the choice to move forward with being pregnant and having a baby, it doesn't matter if you spontaneous labor, unmedicated labor, induction, C-section, nobody else is birthing this baby. Nobody can have this baby for you. You can't hire people to have this baby for you. You can't pay the doctors and midwives enough to have this baby for you. This is not something that we can convenience our way out of, which is another thing that I feel like generations now, with our sort of instant gratification culture that we are dealing with, um, there's a lot of people that I interact with that think if I pay for the most expensive classes, if I pay for the most expensive doula, if I birth at the top hospital, that's it. I don't have to do anything. And no, there's no one you can pay. There's nothing you can do that's going to take the responsibility away from you ultimately to birth this baby, one way or the other, whatever door this baby comes out of. And so it goes back to that the way is through and what you want is on the other side. And that's like any achievement in your life, any goal that you've ever reached, any marathon you've ever run, any athletic endeavor you've ever achieved, you hire people to help you, you get support, you do, this, that, and the other thing to prepare, but who crosses the finish line? You. Who gets the promotion? You, right? Who comes out the other side? You. You. It's up to you to get through it. It's about setting yourself up for success by giving yourself the education, tools, and support and choices by being intentional in your research and all of the things that you can gather leading up to it to give you the best possible outcome. And that's where Care says, not letting ourselves get so lost in everything else in our pregnancy, our nurseries, and all of the other things that we get to the end and we're like, oh my God, I forgot that I have to birth this baby. And now I have nothing to get me through it. You need to be thinking about this, working on this, preparing for this way before the day comes.
And which is the question, why are we avoiding? Why are we avoiding what's inevitably happening, and why are we burying our heads when we know we're going to birth this baby? Putting it off is a detriment. That's our fear, that's our worry, that's our whatever. Do we do that in other parts of our lives? How are we going to do that as a parent? Because if we're doing it now and we're not willing to leave it in the past, figure stuff out while we're pregnant to build a different skill set, then we're going to do it as a parent. Do we want to leave that legacy to our kids? We can only teach what we know because they're modeling our behavior. Like, that's the part that I think sucks about parenting is I'm learning right along with them when some of that I could have done ahead of time, but that wasn't modeled for me. I didn't know that I could do that. I watch parents now and I'm like, oh my gosh, look, they're talking, they're having these conversations, they're taking these classes, they're reading these books, so much more prepared than I was. And I'm grateful to watch that. And then on the flip side, I also see the parents who are just like, yeah, I'm going to take a really good class and I'm going to hire a good doula. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm like, that doesn't get you through parenting and it doesn't get you through the experience. It softens it here and there, but you still have to go through it. You still have to recover from it. I want to know why we spend our lives avoiding living. When did that become a thing? From birth to death, there's a lot of in between, but we all go through a birth and we all go through a death. We don't even talk about death because that's painful. It's scary. It's, we don't talk about birth. It's painful and scary. Both of those things are inevitable. Why do we think that that's not part of life? If we actually talked about it and use those experiences to grow ourselves, they wouldn't be so scary. We have that opportunity. You have that opportunity right now to look back at your life and go, who has told me that I can't do hard things? Why have I believed that? I've done hard things. I've done this and this and this. Why is this any different? Just because it's physical? Just because everybody around me hasn't done it?
And
What
why are hard
lies?
things bad? Why are hard
Exactly.
things bad? Why do we think because something is challenging that it's bad? When the reality is anything that you've ever done in your life or achieved in your life that's been worth doing has not been easy.
Yep.
Period. The greatest experiences, joys, achievements of our lives all come with challenge.
And
Difficult does not have to equal bad.
and we also have to call it out that I'm afraid I'm going to fail.
Oh my
I'm
God.
afraid I'm going to fail holds us back from really big accomplishments. All of us have it. I don't know one person who comes right out of the womb going, I'm going to achieve everything. I am the master. Like, awesome. If that's your attitude and your delusional ego, nobody comes out like that. We are so afraid to fail that we don't try. And trying is where we're getting the life experience. Trying is where we're getting the skills, the mobility to move forward, to do bigger and better things, to improve our life, to be a good example to our kids. We have to try in order to get things. Are we going to fail? Yep. Are we going to succeed? Yep. Why are we so risk averse that we don't go for it? I like the word that you used a couple times, Ashley, is the intentionality of it. What's the intention behind where we want to be at the end of this? It's okay to go, ooh, even the talking about these things is going to make me sick to my stomach. It's going to make me so vulnerable to bring this up to my partner. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. What's on the other side of that, though? What if they don't hold me the way I need them to be held? What if they do? And if they don't, how are you going to get through it? It's a flip of either way of I'm going to need the skills of allowing myself to be vulnerable and being held through it, which I don't do well because I'm a type A, or that's not going to happen. And I'm going to have a skill that says I'm freaking resilient and I can get through hard things. That's what life is. And I feel bad that we wait until pregnancy to be faced with it a lot of times, and then we don't do the work, and then we end up disappointed. And it's still okay to be disappointed. I want to flip you back to the episode with Nikki when we were walking and processing through her fears, and she was talking about the miscarriages and the loss. We're afraid to lose in the birth, pregnancy, postpartum scenario. What Nikki said was, I'm still so proud of my body for going through those losses because look what my body did to get through those losses. Was it sad? Was I anxious? Was I upset? Absolutely. I'm so grateful for those experiences because now I can connect to this baby in a different way. Still with the risk of loss that could happen at any time, but I'm more prepared to deal with it. And if we are going back and looking at, here's what I want for my birth, labor, and postpartum, here's my ideal, here's what I've been through in my life, let's stack up those skills underneath that. And then if those things don't go my way, what are the skills I'm going to be learning? Who's going to help me get through them? And how am I going to accomplish getting back on track as much as possible? All of that is within your control. And I know it's going to be easier to surrender to the experience when you've done all you can do, and then you can focus on the present moment with what your baby needs in that particular bit of time. Because it is temporary, it's one thing at a time. You have the skills to get through it already, whether you acknowledge it or not. And you have time to prepare to make those things line up for this baby's birth.
It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that I say often, which is, "I don't fail. I either win or I learn." And that's really what the crux of what Nikki is saying is that because those pregnancies didn't go the way that I hoped they would have, because it didn't turn out, doesn't mean I failed. And here's the beautiful thing, you can't fail birth. It's not a pass fail. You don't get a grade. You and your baby are going to go through an experience together. And sometimes it turns out the way you hope or the way you visualize. Sometimes it doesn't. And the more you can sort of prepare and give yourself tools and work towards creating a great experience, the more likely you are to have an experience as close to what you hope for as possible. But at the end of the day, how your baby comes earthside, what door they come out of, whether or not you use pain medication, that's all secondary to you and your baby meeting each other, to the love and connection that was in the room when you were going through this process. And you and your baby will meet each other on the other side. There's no failure in birth. So if we can get out of that mentality, and again, it's something that sets birth apart from other things that we struggle with in our lives, that there's no right way and there's no one type of birth that works for every person. So we need to set aside this idea that somehow if I make different choices than what I planned, or if I use tools I didn't intend to use, or I don't use the things that I thought I was going to use, that somehow I did it wrong or I failed. Your baby chose you. They trust you. They're in this with you. They're along for the ride. And you're going to come out the other side of this together. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. We just want you to go into it feeling as confident and as prepared as you possibly can so that it can be the experience that you hope for.
We invite you to take the challenge, write it all out, have conversations with your partner, build a supportive team, have conversations with them as well. Definitely get into a childbirth education class earlier rather than later. Those end of summer births are coming up. September is the busiest birth month of the year, you guys. And it is hard to find a doula, and it's hard to find a hospital that doesn't want to induce and try and control all of those births in September, which adds a whole other layer of pressure to you. Find a class ahead of time and really look into why you're scared to live. We'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.